The council chamber was too quiet. Commander Sheris stood at the center of the circular room, surrounded by representatives from 12 different Velkir worlds. They all stared at her with the same expression, fear mixed with desperation. Outside the station windows, space looked peaceful, but everyone in that room knew the truth. The Tauran Empire was winning the war. 40% of our territory is gone, Sheris said. Her voice was steady, but her hand shook slightly. 8 months. That's all it took for them to tear through our defenses. At this rate, we have maybe a year before they reach our core worlds. One of the council members, an elderly Velkir named Thomas, stood up. What are you suggesting, Commander? We've already committed every ship, every soldier we have. Sheris took a deep breath. I'm suggesting we ask for help. From whom? Another council member asked. The other alliance members are barely holding their own borders. From the humans, the chamber erupted. Voices overlapped, some angry, some scared. Sheris waited for the noise to die down. She had expected this reaction. The Death Worlders, Thomas said, his voice sharp. Have you lost your mind? We know the stories, Commander. Humans are dangerous, unpredictable. Some say they're barely civilized. Some say they win wars, Sheris replied. Every war they've joined. Every conflict they've entered, they win. Not because they have better weapons. Not because they have more ships. They just win. And then what? Another council member demanded. We trade the Tauran for the humans? At least the Tauran follow the rules of war. We know how they fight. But humans? No one really knows what they do. Sheris pulled up a holographic display. It showed casualty reports, territory losses, and projected timelines. The numbers were bad. Really bad. In 6 months, the Tauran will reach Velkir Prime, our homeworld. Where do you all plan to run when that happens? The chamber went quiet again. I'm calling for a vote, Sheris said. Accept human military assistance or face extinction alone. Those are our choices. The vote was close. 17 in favor, 14 against. It passed. Sheris assigned one of her best officers to document everything. Captain Kelness was smart, observant, and most importantly, he asked good questions. I want you to watch the humans, she told him. Write down everything they do, how they think, how they fight. The council will want answers, and I'll need proof that this decision was right. Kelness saluted. Yes, Commander. What should I expect? Sheris shook her head. I don't know. That's what worries me. The human fleet arrived 3 weeks later. Kelness stood in the observation deck watching their ships approach. He had expected a massive armada, hundreds of warships, thousands of fighters. Instead, he counted 20 vessels. 20, to fight a war against an empire. Is that all of them? An officer next to Kelness asked. I think so, Kelness replied, feeling doubt creep into his chest.
Had they made a terrible mistake?
The human commander arrived with a small group. Colonel Daehyun Kang was tall by Velkir standards, with gray hair and calm eyes. He looked at least 50 cycles old, maybe more. He wore a simple uniform with few decorations. When he shook Commander Sheris's hand, his grip was firm but not aggressive. Thank you for coming, Sheris said. We need to discuss battle plans. Our military command has prepared. Actually, Daehyun interrupted gently. I'd like to discuss the Tauran first. Sheris blinked. The Tauran? What about them? Tell me about their culture.
How do they raise their children?
What do they fear? What stories do they tell? The Velkir officers exchanged confused glances. Kelness spoke up. Colonel, perhaps we should focus on their military capabilities. Ship classes, weapon systems, tactical doctrines. Daehyun smiled. It wasn't a mean smile, but it made Kelness uncomfortable somehow. Captain, I can read your reports for that information. What I need to understand is who they are, not what they have. One of the human officers stepped forward. Captain Haewon Park was younger than Daehyun, with sharp features and alert eyes. Commander Sheris, do you have any Tauran prisoners? I'd like to speak with them. We have a few, Sheris said carefully, but they've already been interrogated. They didn't reveal much useful information. I'm not looking for military secrets, Haewon replied. I want to know what they talk about when they think no one important is listening. What they complain about. What they miss from home. Another human officer, Lieutenant Jinwoo Choi, pulled out a data pad. Do you have examples of Tauran art? Music, poetry, any propaganda broadcast we can analyze? Kelness couldn't hold back anymore. With respect, what does any of this have to do with fighting a war? Daehyun turned to face him directly. His eyes weren't harsh, but they were serious. Very serious. Captain, we don't just fight armies. We fight the will to make war. To do that, we need to understand what makes them want to fight in the first place, and more importantly, what might make them want to stop. That sounds like psychology, not warfare, Kelnis said. War is psychology, Daehyun replied. Everything else is just tools. The first joint operation happened 2 weeks later. The Valkyr had planned a standard military assault on a mining colony that the Tauren had captured. The plan was simple. Bombard their defenses from orbit. Land troops fight for control of the main facilities. Valkyr Command estimated 4 to 7 days of heavy combat. Casualties would be high, but the colony was strategically important. Daehyun looked at the plan and shook his head. There's a better way. He proposed something different. No bombardment, no direct assault. Instead, the humans would arrive 3 days early and do something else. He wouldn't explain exactly what, which made the Valkyr commanders nervous. But they had agreed to let the humans lead, so they accepted the plan. Kelnis joined the human team. He wanted to see firsthand what they would do. The human ships approached the colony quietly. No weapons fire, no threatening transmissions. They simply took up positions in high orbit and started deploying equipment. Strange equipment that Kelnis didn't recognize. Arrays of broadcasting antennas, signal jammers. Large communication satellites, what are those? Kelnis asked Haewon. Tools, she replied, not looking away from her screens. We're about to have a conversation with the Tauren garrison. They just don't know it yet. For 3 days, the humans broadcast signals. Kelnis listened to some of them. They were Tauren military communications, but something was wrong with them. Orders contradicted each other. Status reports didn't match. Command messages seemed confused. Are you jamming their communications? Kelnis asked. No, Jinwoo said. He was working at a terminal, looking very focused. Jamming is simple. Anyone can do that. We're doing something more useful. We're adding to their communications. Fake orders, false intelligence, reports that make them question everything they hear. That's illegal, Kelnis protested. The Galactic Convention on Warfare forbids impersonating. We're not impersonating anyone, Jinwoo interrupted. We're broadcasting on open frequencies. If they choose to believe these are real orders, that's their mistake, not our crime. Down on the colony, things were getting worse for the Tauren garrison. They received orders to retreat, then orders to hold position, then orders saying the retreat orders were fake, then confirmation that all orders were real. Their command structure was falling apart, and they didn't even know why. Sergeant Nari Song, the human medic, did something that disturbed Kelnis even more. She treated wounded Tauren soldiers who had been captured in a small skirmish. But while she worked, she talked to them, asked them questions about their families back home, about what they thought of the war, about whether they believed their commanders cared if they lived or died. You're interrogating them, Kelnis said. I'm treating them, Nari replied calmly, wrapping a bandage around a Tauren soldier's arm. If they choose to talk while I work, that's their decision. No one is forcing them. But Kelnis noticed something. The questions she asked were designed perfectly. Each one made the Tauren soldiers think, made them doubt, made them wonder if they were on the wrong side. On the 4th day, the Tauren garrison surrendered. Just like that. No battle, no bombing, no blood, they simply gave up. Kelnis was shocked. The Valkyr command was amazed. They had prepared for a week of brutal fighting. Instead, the humans had won in 4 days without firing a single shot at the colony. How? Sheris asked Daehyun. They defeated themselves, Daehyun said simply. We just helped them realize they wanted to. That night, Kelnis sat in his quarters trying to write his first report. His hands hovered over the keyboard. How could he explain what he had seen? The humans hadn't broken any laws. They hadn't committed atrocities. They hadn't even fought a real battle. But something about what they did felt wrong. Not evil, exactly. Just fundamentally different from how the Valkyr understood warfare. He finally wrote, The humans do not fight to kill. They fight to break. They attack the mind before they attack the body. I do not know if this is brilliance or something darker. I fear we have invited something into this war that we do not fully understand. Kelnis read his words again. Then he sent the report to Commander Sheris. Outside his window, the human fleet hung in space, quiet and patient, waiting for the next battle that might not be a battle at all. The fortress world of Kaltros was supposed to take months to capture, The Velkir military planners had been very clear about that. Massive orbital defenses, underground bunkers that could survive bombardment, a garrison of 50,000 Tauran soldiers with supplies for a year-long siege. We'll need at least 6 months, the Velkir general told Commander Sheris. Maybe longer. This will be costly. Colonel Daehyun Kang studied the fortress data for 3 days. Then he said, "Give me 4 weeks." The Velkir generals thought he was insane. Kelnis was starting to think they might be right. But Sheris had made her choice. 4 weeks, Colonel. Show us what you can do. The humans didn't start by attacking the fortress. They started by watching, listening, learning. Every communication that went in or out of Kaltros was intercepted and analyzed. Every supply ship was tracked. Every routine was documented. Kelnis watched Jinwoo work. The intelligence officer sat surrounded by screens showing data streams. Thousands of messages, reports, personal communications. "What are you looking for?" Kelnis asked. "Patterns," Jinwoo replied without looking up. "People are creatures of habit. Even soldiers. Especially soldiers. Routines make them feel safe. Understanding those routines lets us break that safety. To what purpose? To make them afraid. Fear is a weapon, Captain. The most powerful weapon in any war." Haywan brought in Tauran defectors. Not many had defected yet, but the few who had were interviewed extensively. Not about military secrets, about life inside the fortress. What did soldiers complain about? What did they worry about? What rumors spread through the barracks? One defector mentioned that many soldiers worried about their families. The Tauran Empire had a policy of relocating families of deployed soldiers to safety zones. But these zones were often far from home, and communication was limited. "That's useful," Haywan said, making notes. "How is that useful?" Kelnis asked. She looked at him with those sharp eyes. "Because worry is a crack in armor. If we can make that worry bigger, the armor breaks." 2 weeks into the operation, the humans began broadcasting. But not to the fortress commanders. Not to the military command. They broadcast on personal frequencies. Individual channels that soldiers used to communicate with each other. The messages were personal. Very personal. Tauran Soldier Designation 473921, one message said. "Your family was relocated to Settlement Zone 9. Your daughter's school reports show she's struggling with the new language requirements. Your spouse has requested transfer 3 times. All requests denied." The soldier who heard that message didn't know how to react. How did the humans know his designation number? How did they know about his daughter? How did they know about his spouse's transfer requests? More messages followed. Hundreds of them. Each one targeted at a specific soldier. Each one containing information that should have been private, personal, secret. The humans weren't making threats. That was the terrifying part. They weren't saying, "We'll hurt your family." They were just proving they knew. They knew everything. Every detail. Every personal fact. Kelnis listened to some of the broadcasts and felt sick. "This is psychological torture." "No," Daehyun said calmly. "Torture inflicts pain. We're providing information. True information. If that information causes distress, that's not our fault." "You know exactly what you're doing," Kelnis said, his voice harder than he intended. "Yes," Daehyun agreed. "We do." Inside the fortress, panic spread. Soldiers realized the humans had complete intelligence on them. Not just military data, personal data, family information, private communications, everything. The implication was clear. If the humans knew this much, what else did they know? Could the soldiers ever escape? Could they ever be truly unknown again? Lieutenant Jinwoo explained it to Kelnis one evening. Fear of the unknown is powerful, but fear of being known is worse. Being unknown means you might escape, might hide, might survive. Being known means you're mapped, tracked, targeted. There's no escape from something that knows everything about you. "You're breaking their minds," Kelnis said quietly. "We're making them understand their situation," Jinwoo corrected. "They're surrounded, outnumbered, and completely exposed. Those are facts. We're just making sure they understand those facts." But the humans didn't stop there. Sergeant Nari started broadcasting different messages. These ones showed captured Tauran soldiers, but they weren't being mistreated. They were being treated well. Very well. The videos showed prisoners receiving medical care, good food, comfortable quarters. They showed prisoners talking freely about how the war wasn't their choice, how they had been ordered to fight, how the human forces treated them with respect. This war isn't yours, Nari said in one broadcast. You didn't choose it. Your leaders chose it for you. When you're ready to go home, we'll help you get there. We've already returned 17 soldiers to their families. Unharmed, unquestioned, just returned. Because this war isn't with you. It's with the people who sent you here. The broadcast showed proof, video evidence of Tauran soldiers being released at neutral ports, testimonies from their families confirming they had returned home safely. The humans were keeping their promises. Inside Kaltros, morale collapsed. Soldiers started asking questions their commanders couldn't answer. Why were they fighting? What would victory accomplish? Why should they die for a war they didn't start? The fortress commander, a veteran named Drennick, tried to rally his troops. He gave speeches about honor and duty, about defending the empire, about the glory of military service. But the humans had anticipated this. They broadcast his personal communications, messages where Drennick complained about the war to his superiors, messages where he called his soldiers acceptable losses, messages where he requested reassignment because he didn't believe the war could be won. The speeches about honor rang hollow after that Kelnis confronted Daehyun in the Human Command Center. This isn't warfare. This is manipulation. It's both, Daehyun said. War has always been about breaking the enemy's will to fight. We've just become very good at it. You're destroying them from the inside. We're showing them the truth, that their leaders don't care about them, that they're expendable, that going home is an option. If those truths destroy their will to fight, whose fault is that? Yours, Kelnis shouted. You're weaponizing doubt, fear, hopelessness. Daehyun stood up. He walked over to a window that showed Kaltros in the distance. Tell me, Captain, in a traditional siege, how many would die? Your people and theirs? Kelnis didn't answer. Thousands, Daehyun continued. Maybe tens of thousands. Months of bombing, starvation, disease. Brutal close combat when you finally breach their walls. Bodies piled up. Cities destroyed for what? To claim a fortress? He turned to face Kelnis. Or we can do this! Break their will without breaking their bodies. Let them go home to their families. End the war without the blood. Which is more moral, Captain? Kelnis had no answer to that. On day 23, junior officers inside Kaltros staged a coup. They arrested Commander Drennick. Not because they wanted to win the war, because they wanted to survive it. The fortress surrendered on day 24, 0 human casualties. Minimal Velker casualties. 50,000 Tauran soldiers laid down their weapons without a real fight. The Velker military command celebrated. This was a massive victory achieved in less than a month. What should have taken half a year had taken less than 4 weeks. But Kelnis didn't celebrate. He watched the Tauran soldiers being processed. They looked defeated in a way that disturbed him. Not physically beaten, mentally exhausted, psychologically drained. They had lost something more than a battle. They had lost faith in their leadership, their mission, and maybe themselves. That evening, Kelnis requested a private meeting with Daehyun. They met in a small observation room, just the two of them. Is this how humans always fight? Kelnis asked directly. Daehyun was quiet for a moment. Then he said, only against enemies we don't want to destroy completely. What does that mean? It means we have other methods, worse methods, but we prefer this way. It's cleaner, more permanent. When you bomb an enemy into submission, their children grow up wanting revenge. When you break their will to fight, their children grow up wanting peace. But you violate their minds, Kelnis said. You take away their sense of safety, their privacy, their certainty. We take away their certainty, Daehyun agreed. That's not the same as violence. Violence heals. Broken bones mend, wounds close. But doubt? Doubt stays forever. A soldier who doubts his cause won't fight well. A population that doubts their leaders won't support a long war. So you weaponize doubt. We weaponize truth, Daehyun corrected. Everything we told those soldiers was true. Their families were relocated. Their commander did call them expendable. Their empire doesn't care if they live or die. We didn't lie. We just made sure they knew the truth. Kelnis stood up to leave. At the door, he paused. You win without fighting. That should be admirable. So why does it feel like losing? Daehyun didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer. Because you're realizing that war isn't what you thought it was. You thought it was about bravery and honor and fighting for something you believe in. We're showing you that war is about breaking people, making them stop fighting. We're just honest about it. Kelness left without another word. 6 months into the war, everything had changed. The Valkyr were winning. Territory that had been lost was being reclaimed. Tauren forces were retreating on multiple fronts. The human methods were working almost too well. Commander Sheris held a celebration at Valkyr Command. Officers from dozens of worlds attended. Everyone praised the human allies. Everyone celebrated the victories. But Kelness stood at the edge of the room watching. He couldn't celebrate. Something was wrong. He could feel it. Later that week, Kelness visited the prisoner processing center. Thousands of Tauren soldiers had surrendered over the past months. They were being held in comfortable facilities, given good food, allowed to communicate with families. By galactic standards, they were treated well, but something about them disturbed Kelness. They weren't like normal prisoners of war. They were too quiet, too passive. They didn't organize, didn't resist, didn't even seem angry. They just existed, waiting for whatever would happen next. One of the Valkyr guards noticed Kelness watching. Strange, isn't it? We have 5,000 Tauren soldiers here. Not one incident. Not one fight. Not one attempted escape. They're too easy to manage. Too easy, Kelness repeated. The words felt wrong in his mouth. He requested access to the Human Intelligence Operations Center. This took 3 days of authorization requests, but eventually Daehyun approved it. "Come see what we do," the colonel said. "You're documenting everything anyway. You should understand the full picture." The operations center was smaller than Kelness expected, maybe 20 humans working at terminals, but the data flowing through that room was massive, overwhelming. Lieutenant Jinwoo gave him the tour. "This is the heart of Psychological Warfare Command," he said, gesturing at the screens. "Everything we do flows through here." Kelness looked at the screens. They showed databases, massive databases containing information about Tauren citizens. Not just soldiers, everyone. Names, families, occupations, communication patterns, social connections, personal fears, cultural values. "You've mapped their entire society," Kelness said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We've mapped what matters," Jinwoo corrected. "We can't track billions of individuals perfectly, but we can track patterns, social networks, influence chains. Who listens to whom? Who doubts? Who believes? Who might be persuaded?" One screen showed a Tauren officer. His file included everything: service record, family history, psychological evaluation, communication transcripts, and something labeled vulnerability assessment. "What's that?" Kelness pointed at the assessment. Jinwoo pulled up the file. "This officer has a daughter with a chronic medical condition. He's worried about affording treatment. He's also proud of his military tradition. His grandfather served with honor, so he's caught between duty and family. That's a vulnerability. You target people like this? We inform people like this," Jinwoo said carefully. "We make sure he knows that continued service means less money for his daughter's treatment. We make sure he knows that his honorable grandfather never had to choose between duty and family survival. We don't tell him what to do. We just make sure he understands his choices clearly." "And then he breaks," Kelness said. "And then he makes an informed decision," Jinwoo replied. "If that decision is to stop fighting, that's his choice." Kelness moved through the operations center looking at different terminals. Each one showed psychological warfare in action. Targeted messages, customized broadcasts, personalized information campaigns. The humans weren't fighting an army. They were fighting millions of individuals, each one targeted precisely. "This is why they surrender so easily," Kelness said. "You've broken them before they even fight." "We've informed them," Jinwoo insisted. "There's a difference, is there?" Kelness asked. But Jinwoo didn't answer. The next day, Kelness watched Sergeant Nari conduct an interrogation. He had seen her work before, but this time he watched more carefully, trying to understand the method behind what she did. The prisoner was a Tauren soldier, young, maybe 20 cycles. He had been captured 3 days ago. Nari was treating a wound on his arm. "This will sting a bit," she said gently, applying antiseptic. The soldier winced. "Sorry, I know it hurts. Medical supplies are limited on both sides of this war. Your commanders probably haven't been able to get you proper treatment for weeks." The soldier nodded. "Months, actually. We've been requesting medical supplies since the start of the campaign. They keep promising them, but nothing arrives." "That must be frustrating," Nari said, wrapping a clean bandage. Soldiers doing their duty, and the people in charge can't even provide basic medical care. It's the war, the soldier said. Resources are stretched, are they? Nari asked, her voice still gentle. Or are they being allocated elsewhere? To officer quarters? To defensive positions around core worlds? To protecting what matters to the people making decisions? The soldier was quiet. I'm not trying to turn you against your leaders, Nari continued, finishing the bandage. I'm just a medic. I see soldiers from both sides. And I notice patterns. The Tauren officers we capture are always well-fed, well-equipped. The regular soldiers like you? Not so much. That seems unfair. She stood up, checking her work. Your arm will heal fine. You'll be okay. Is there anything else you need? Are you comfortable? Getting enough food? Yes, the soldier said quietly. Better food than we had on the front lines. I'm glad, Nari said. She started to leave, then paused. Oh, one more thing. Just for my records. Where were you deployed before this? Just need to note it in your medical file. And just like that, the soldier started talking, telling her about his unit, his deployment, his concerns, his doubts. Not because Nari forced him, because she had made him comfortable, made him feel cared for, made him want to talk. Kelnis watched through the observation window. When Nari left the room, he confronted her in the hallway. That's not medical treatment. That's manipulation. Nari looked at him calmly. I did treat him. His wound is clean and properly bandaged. If he chose to talk while I worked, that's his decision. I didn't force anything. You guided him, made him doubt his leaders, made him feel dependent on you for care. I told him the truth, Nari said. His leaders haven't provided adequate medical supplies. That's a fact. Tauren officers are better equipped than regular soldiers. That's a fact. If those facts make him doubt his cause, whose fault is that? Mine for stating facts? Or his leaders for creating the situation? You're twisting truth into a weapon, Kelnis said. Truth is a weapon, Nari replied. The most effective one humans have ever discovered. Pain creates martyrs. Torture creates heroes. But kindness? Kindness creates doubt, and doubt ends wars. Kelnis brought his concerns to Commander Sheris. They met in her private office away from other ears. We're winning, Sheris said after Kelnis finished his report. Every day we reclaim more territory. Fewer of our people die. The humans are giving us victory. At what cost? Kelnis demanded. What cost? We're losing fewer soldiers than any campaign in our history. Our casualties are minimal. I'm not talking about our casualties. I'm talking about what we're becoming. The methods we're using. The galaxy is watching, Commander. If we normalize this kind of warfare, where does it end? Sheris was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed. I know. I've seen the reports you're sending. I've read your concerns. And you're not wrong. Then why continue? Because we were dying. Sheris stood up, her voice sharp. 6 months ago, we were facing extinction. The Tauren were going to overrun our worlds, kill or enslave our people. Was I supposed to choose honor over survival? I'm not saying, yes, you are, Sheris interrupted. You're saying the humans' methods make you uncomfortable. They make me uncomfortable too. But they work. They save lives. They win battles without bloodshed. How is that wrong? Kelnis struggled to find words. Because it changes people. Those Tauren prisoners aren't people anymore. They're broken. Psychologically compromised. They can never go back to normal lives. They're alive, Sheris said. In traditional warfare, they'd be dead. Which is better? I don't know, Kelnis admitted. I honestly don't know anymore. Sheris sat back down. Her voice was softer now. Keep documenting. Keep questioning. When this war is over, the galaxy will need to decide what they think of human methods. Your reports will help them decide. But for now, we need to survive. And the humans are making that possible. That evening, Kelnis found Captain Haywan alone in an observation deck. She was staring out at the stars, looking tired. Can I join you? Kelnis asked. It's a free deck, Haywan replied. They stood in silence for a while. Finally, Kelnis spoke. Do you know how you're seen? You and the other humans? Yes, Haywan said simply. Does it bother you? She was quiet for a long moment. Every species that learns our methods fears us afterward. We're effective, so we're hired. Then we win, and suddenly we're dangerous. We're too good at what we do, so we become isolated, feared, avoided until the next time someone is desperate enough to ask for help. You could fight conventionally, Kelnis suggested. Like everyone else? We could, Haywan agreed. More people would die. Yours and theirs. Is that more moral? More blood makes it more honorable? It makes it understandable, Kelnis said. This, what you do, it's alien to us. 10 months. That's how long the war had lasted. The Tauran Empire was collapsing. Most of their conquered territory had been liberated. Their military was in retreat. Only one stronghold remained. The Tauran core systems centered around their homeworld. Warlord Dreamak commanded the final defense personally. He was a legendary figure among the Tauran. 40 years of military service. Never lost a major battle. He had fortified the core systems with everything the Empire had left. Every ship, every soldier, every defensive weapon. The Valkyr military expected this to be the hardest fight of the war. A desperate enemy defending their home. The casualties would be terrible on both sides. Colonel Daehyun Kang studied the intelligence reports for a week. Then he called a meeting with Commander Sheris and her senior staff. We can end this without destroying the Tauran homeworld, he said. How? Sheris asked. Dreamak has 500,000 soldiers defending those systems. He'll fight to the last breath. He won't have to, Daehyun replied. We're not going to fight him. We're going to make his own people stop the war for him. Kelnis felt cold fear in his chest. What do you mean? Daehyun pulled up a tactical display. For 10 months, we've been fighting the Tauran military. We've broken their soldiers, defeated their fleets, captured their territory, but we've never targeted what really matters. They're civilians, Haewon said, completing his thought. No, Sheris said immediately. Absolutely not. The Galactic Convention. We're not going to harm civilians, Daehyun interrupted. We're going to inform them, show them the truth their government has been hiding. He explained the plan. It was comprehensive, terrifying, and completely legal by galactic law. The Valkyr leadership debated for 2 days. Kelnis argued against it. Other officers argued against it. But in the end, desperation won. The plan was approved. 3 days later, the Human Information Campaign began. It started with broadcasts. Not on military frequencies. On civilian channels, entertainment networks, communication platforms. Every frequency that ordinary Tauran citizens used. The humans had mapped all of them over the past months. The first broadcasts were simple. Battle reports. Real battle reports. Not the propaganda that Tauran leadership had been feeding their people. Real casualty numbers. Real territory losses. Real footage of defeated armies and surrendering soldiers. The Tauran government tried to jam the broadcasts. The humans were ready for that. They had so many transmission points, so many broadcasting platforms that jamming was impossible. Every time one signal was blocked, 10 more appeared. Lieutenant Jinwoo coordinated the information warfare. We're not lying, he told Kelnis, who was watching from the operations center. Everything we're showing them is true. Videos of their surrendered soldiers, records of defeat, official communications their government tried to hide. All true. You're causing panic, Kelnis said. He was watching monitor feeds showing Tauran civilian responses, crowds gathering, people demanding answers from their government. We're causing awareness, Jinwoo corrected. The Tauran people have been lied to for months, told that victory was near, told that their soldiers were winning. Now they know the truth. Their reaction to that truth is their choice. The broadcasts escalated. The humans released intercepted communications from Tauran leadership. Messages showing that high-ranking officials knew the war was lost. Messages showing them preparing escape plans for themselves while ordering soldiers to fight to the death. Messages showing them securing their own wealth and safety while civilians faced potential invasion. One message was particularly damaging. It showed Warlord Dreamak requesting evacuation plans for leadership families, while telling his soldiers to defend the homeworld at all costs. The message proved that he was planning to save himself and let everyone else die. The Tauran homeworld erupted. Protests filled the streets, people demanding that their government end the war, parents refusing to let their children be drafted for what everyone now knew was a lost cause. Sergeant Nari began broadcasting messages directly to Tauran civilians. Her face appeared on their screens, calm, professional, sympathetic. My name is Nari Song, she said. I'm a medic with the human forces. I've treated thousands of soldiers from both sides in this war. Your sons and daughters, your husbands and wives. I want you to know that every Tauran soldier we've captured is alive and healthy. We've treated their wounds, fed them well, allowed them to contact families. She showed footage, real footage of Toran prisoners receiving medical care, living in clean facilities, talking to their families via communication links. This war is not with you, Nari continued. It's not with the Toran people. It's with the leaders who started this war and won't end it. Your loved ones who surrendered are safe. They're alive. They're waiting to come home. The only thing preventing that is leadership that won't accept reality. The message was clear. Peace meant reunion. Continued war meant death. The choice was obvious. Warlord Dreamak tried to rally his people. He gave speeches about honor, about defending Toran pride, about not surrendering to alien forces, but his words fell flat. The people had seen the evidence. They knew their leaders had lied. They knew the war was lost. They knew their sons and daughters were dying for nothing. Kelness watched it all happen from the operations center. The systematic dismantling of an entire society's will to fight. The humans weren't attacking the Toran homeworld. They were attacking the social contract between the Toran government and its people, breaking trust, creating division, forcing civilians to question everything. This is warfare against an entire civilization, he said to Daehyun. This is truth warfare, Daehyun replied. Everything we're telling them is accurate. If their society can't handle truth, that's not our fault. You're destroying them from within. We're showing them what their leaders really are. What they do with that information is their choice. The Toran civilian resistance grew. Protests turned into organized movements. Parents formed networks to prevent military recruitment. Workers in defense industries went on strike. Transportation networks were disrupted by civilian action. The Toran government was facing internal collapse. Captain Haywan coordinated with Toran resistance groups. Not rebellions. Not terrorists. Ordinary citizens who just wanted the war to end. She provided them with communication tools, organizational frameworks, ways to make their voices heard. We're not creating the resistance, she explained to Kelness. It already existed. People always resist wars they don't believe in. We're just giving them the tools to organize effectively. You're weaponizing civilian populations, Kelness said. We're empowering them, Haywan corrected, giving them information and tools. What they do with those is their decision. Warlord Dreamak faced an impossible situation. His military was ready to fight, but his civilian population was demanding surrender. His government was fracturing. His own officers were questioning orders. The social structure that supported military action was collapsing. On day 17 of the campaign, Dreamak requested negotiation with the human command. The meeting took place on a neutral station. Kelness attended as an observer. Warlord Dreamak arrived with a small security detail. He looked tired, older than his records indicated. The weight of failed leadership showing in every movement. Colonel Daehyun Kang met him in a simple conference room. No theatrics, no displays of power, just two military leaders facing each other. I came to discuss terms, Dreamak said. I'm listening, Daehyun replied. Dreamak was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke. I expected threats, ultimatums, demands for unconditional surrender with humiliation. Why would I do that? Daehyun asked. Because you've won, Dreamak said. Because you could destroy us now. Your forces, combined with the Velkir, could bombard my worlds into submission. You could occupy our territory, execute our leadership. Everything we did to the Velkir, you could do to us. We could, Daehyun agreed. But why would we? Revenge, justice, to make an example. Daehyun shook his head. Warlord Dreamak, I don't want to rule your people. I don't want to occupy your worlds. I don't want to execute your leaders. I just want you to stop fighting. He pulled up a document, peace terms. Surprisingly reasonable terms. The Toran Empire would return all conquered territory, pay reparations to the Velkir, reduce military to defensive levels. But they would retain sovereignty, keep their government. No occupation, no trials, no humiliation. Dreamak read the terms carefully. This is generous. Why? Because destroyed empires breed revenge, Daehyun said. If we crush you completely, your children will grow up hating us, wanting to restore what was lost, wanting to fight again in 20 years. But if we defeat you honorably, your children will grow up wanting peace, understanding that war doesn't pay. You're not just fighting this war, Dreamak said slowly. You're fighting the next one, making sure it never happens. Exactly. Dreamak was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke. You're the most dangerous beings I've ever encountered. Because we win? Daehyun asked. Because you think generations ahead. Because you don't just defeat enemies. You change them. Make them not want to be enemies anymore. He struggled for words. That's not warfare. That's something else. Something I don't have a word for. 3 months after the war ended, the Valkyr Confederation held a massive celebration. Parades filled the streets of Valkyr Prime. Monuments were built. Songs were written. The victory was complete, and the cost had been remarkably low. Fewer than 5,000 Valkyr casualties in a war that could have killed millions. Captain Kelness didn't attend the celebrations. He sat in his small office, surrounded by data pads containing months of reports. Everything he had witnessed. Everything he had documented. All the victories that felt like defeats. All the battles that weren't really battles. Commander Sheris had given him a new assignment. Present his findings to the Galactic Council. The galaxy wanted to know about human warfare methods. Should they be adopted? Should they be prohibited? Should humans be welcomed as allies or feared as threats? Kelness had 2 weeks to prepare his presentation. 2 weeks to decide how to explain something he still didn't fully understand himself. He was reviewing footage when someone knocked on his door. "Come in," he said, not looking up. The door opened. Colonel Dae-Hyun Kang entered. Kelness hadn't seen him in weeks. The humans had kept mostly to themselves since the war ended, preparing for departure. "Captain," Dae-Hyun said, "I heard you're presenting to the Galactic Council." "News travels fast," Kelness replied. "May I sit?" Kelness gestured to a chair. Dae-Hyun sat down, looking relaxed, not like a man whose methods were about to be judged by the entire galaxy. "What will you tell them?" Dae-Hyun asked. "The truth," Kelness said. "Everything I saw." "Everything you did, and that's fair." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Kelness asked the question that had been bothering him for months. "Do you consider yourselves moral? Ethical? Good?" Dae-Hyun was quiet for a long time. "We consider ourselves effective. Morality is a luxury for beings who have choices. We made our choices a long time ago." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I have," Dae-Hyun said. "Captain, do you know Earth's history?" "Some of it. We almost destroyed ourselves. Multiple times. We built weapons that could end all life on our planet. Nuclear weapons. Biological weapons. Chemical weapons. And we came very close to using them. Several times we stood on the edge of total extinction." Dae-Hyun leaned forward. "We had to learn. Had to evolve. Had to find ways to end conflicts without ending ourselves. So we developed psychological warfare. Information warfare. Cultural warfare. We learned to fight wars without destroying worlds. You learned to destroy minds instead," Kelness said. "We learned to change minds," Dae-Hyun corrected. "There's a difference. A destroyed mind is useless. A changed mind can build peace. We don't break people for cruelty's sake. We break them to save them, and ourselves. That's a convenient justification." "It's survival," Dae-Hyun said, his voice harder now. "You've never faced extinction, Captain." "Not real extinction. The complete end of your species." "We have, multiple times. That changes you. Makes you willing to do things that others find uncomfortable. Because uncomfortable is better than dead," Kelness wanted to argue, wanted to say that some things were more important than survival. But the words wouldn't come, because he didn't know if he believed that. The Valkyr had been facing extinction 10 months ago. They had been desperate enough to accept human help. Did that make them just as guilty? The Galactic Council convened 2 weeks later. Representatives from 47 species filled the chamber. Kelness stood at the center, his compiled reports projected on screens around him. He spoke for 3 hours, showed footage, explained methods, detailed every operation he had witnessed. The council members watched in silence. Some looked fascinated. Some looked horrified. All looked disturbed. When he finished, the questions began. "These methods," a council member from the Anthrace species said, "they don't violate any specific warfare conventions. But they feel wrong. How do we classify them?" "That's for you to decide," Kelness replied. "I'm just reporting what I observed. Should we adopt these methods?" Another asked. "They're clearly effective. Should we prohibit them?" A third council member challenged. "If they save lives, how can we justify banning them?" The debate went on for hours. No consensus emerged. Some argued that effectiveness justified any method. Others argued that some victories weren't worth the cost to civilization itself. Finally, the council chair called for a recess. They would debate privately and reconvene in 3 days. Kelness left the chamber feeling exhausted. In the hallway, he encountered Captain HFY Park. She was leaning against a wall waiting. "That was quite a presentation," she said. "Was it accurate?" Kelness asked. "Very. You didn't leave anything out. Didn't soften anything. That took courage. Or stupidity." HFY smiled slightly. "Maybe both. Can I show you something?" She led him to a private viewing room. Inside, a screen showed news footage from the Tauran homeworld. Kelness watched, confused at first. Then he understood what he was seeing: democratic elections. The Tauran were holding their first democratic elections in over a century. The military government had been replaced by civilian leadership. People were voting, peacefully, hopefully. "This happened because of the war," HFY said. "Because we showed them the truth about their leadership. Because we gave them tools to organize. Because we made them stop wanting authoritarian military control." "You engineered this," Kelness said. "We enabled this," HFY corrected. "The Tauran people chose democracy. We just showed them it was possible. By destroying their faith in their government, by revealing that their faith was misplaced." HFY turned to face him. "Kelness, I know what you think of us. I know what you're going to recommend to the council. You think we're dangerous. You're right, we are dangerous. But we're dangerous to tyrants and warmongers, not to people who want peace." "You're dangerous to anyone you decide is dangerous," Kelness said. "That's what frightens me. You have power with no real check on it. You can destroy societies from within. Who decides when that's justified?" "We do," HFY said simply. "And yes, that's frightening. It frightens us too. Do you think we don't know what we're capable of? Do you think we sleep well at night?" She was quiet for a moment. "We carry the weight of our methods, Captain. Every mind we break, every certainty we destroy, every person we change. We remember all of them. And we live with that burden because the alternative is worse." "What alternative?" "Conventional warfare," HFY said. "Millions dead. Planets bombed. Civilizations destroyed. Generations of hatred and revenge. We've seen that future. We've lived it. Our entire history is that future. So we chose a different path. A path that makes beings like you uncomfortable, but it saves lives, and that matters more than comfort." 3 days later, the Galactic Council reconvened. Kelness was called to hear their decision. The council chair spoke. "We have debated extensively. The human methods are effective. They save lives. They end conflicts quickly, but they represent a fundamental change in how warfare is conducted, a change with implications we don't fully understand." He paused. "Therefore, our decision is as follows. Human psychological warfare methods will not be banned, but they will not be adopted by other species. Humans will remain the only practitioners of these methods. They will be specialists, called upon when conventional warfare would result in unacceptable casualties." "You're making them the galaxy's assassins," one council member objected. "Surgical strike specialists in warfare." "Yes," the chair agreed, "because sometimes surgery is necessary, and they're the only ones with steady enough hands." The decision was controversial, but it passed. Humans would be welcomed as allies, but feared, always feared. Respected for their effectiveness, but isolated for their methods. Kelness found Daehyun later that evening. The colonel was watching the human fleet prepare for departure. "So we're the galaxy's necessary evil," Daehyun said. "Not a question." "Something like that," Kelness replied. "We've been that before, for other species, other conflicts. We'll be that again." He didn't sound bitter, just resigned. "It's the price of being good at what we do." "Do you regret it?" Kelness asked. "Your methods? The isolation they cause?" Daehyun was quiet for a long time. "I regret that they're necessary. I regret that the galaxy hasn't evolved past warfare. I regret that beings still choose violence over peace. But do I regret our methods? No, because they work. Because they save lives. Because they end conflicts that would otherwise consume generations." He turned to face Kelness. "You see us as monsters, beings who wage war against minds instead of bodies. Maybe you're right. Maybe that is monstrous, but it's a monstrosity that allows others to live. And I'll carry that burden if it means fewer mothers bury their children, fewer worlds burn, fewer species face extinction." "That's a heavy burden," Kelness said. "Yes," Daehyun agreed, "but we're used to heavy burdens. We're from Earth, a death world. Everything there is heavy. The next day, an unexpected visitor arrived at Velkir Command, former warlord Dreamak, now civilian advisor to the new Tauran democratic government. He requested a meeting with Kelnis. They met in a quiet garden on Velkir Prime. Dreamak looked different in civilian clothes. Smaller somehow, more human in an ironic way. Captain Kelnis, Dreamak said, I heard you presented to the Galactic Council. About human methods. I did. May I ask what you recommended?